What an asshole, Keith.
Man, this movie really is deep.
Some Kind of Wonderful is Pretty in Pink, how it should have ended. Hello and welcome to the Untitled Gen X podcast.
A podcast sometimes hosted by two childhood best friends, always dedicated to the pop culture that raised us.
I'm Kate, a writer and a midwife.
And I'm Lori, a writer and a pop culture lover.
Today we welcome back a very special guest, friend of the pod, Kenny Stach.
Kenny's here to gush all over Gen X's greatest love triangle, 1987's Some Kind of Wonderful. Welcome to the podcast, Kenny.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's been a little bit since we've been together, but Some Kind of Wonderful, right? And you guys introduced it perfect. Would you say the perfect love triangle?
The Gen X love triangle. It's like the quintessential Gen X love triangle.
It really is. It's the lesser known love triangle, right? Don't hear a lot of people talking about it.
People talk about, what's the one with Molly Ringwald?
Pretty in Pink?
Yeah. Wait, is that it? Pretty in Pink? With
yes,
Ducky?
which is like the same movie. Yeah.
Right. People are like, Some Kind of Wonderful is Pretty in Pink, how it should have ended. So.
How it should have ended. Well,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you are both here because you started talking, Kenny, about how Some Kind of Wonderful is like one of your favorite movies. And I'm like, oh my God, it's one of Kate's favorite movies. We have got to get all of us together to cover it. So it finally happened. So you guys, tell me why this is like one of your favorite movies.
I think I was very drawn to Watts as a character because I was not a girly girl.
Mhm.
And I always felt a little like I didn't quite fit in with the super pretty girls. And so I was like, this person, like it was like an every woman for, those of us that didn't feel super girly. And then it's good storytelling, right? Like it's just a good story.
Yeah, it really is. Kenny, what about you?
Well, I think it's painfully awkward, right? I can't speak for all males, but
No, speak for every single one of them right now.
well, just I don't know that I can, but yeah, Eric Stoltz's character is a classic, right? For those of us that weren't always, I don't know, popular, if you will, or weren't popular, and you were just kind of under the radar type of feeling, and you had big aspiration, and by aspirations meaning you had these aspirations to date the pretty gal, in school, but you were just kind of short of it.
I'm loving what you're saying, and I believe you when you tell it, Kenny, but I have to say, I mean, we all went to the same high school.
Yes, we did.
And you were very cool, and you got the pretty girl, and I'm thinking you identified with the underdog aspect of this when we, as underclassmen, looked to you and thought, this is like the popular guy, and he got the beautiful girl.
Maybe that's part of it, right? I mean, maybe that's the James Dean sort of rebel without a cause where you're just kind of, it's that thing where if you don't know James Dean in his movies, you think he's some kind of tough, rough and tumble guy. But like when you watch his movies, he's the exact opposite. He's like this outcast, sort of loner and insecure. I guess we all go to bed alone in a way, you all go to sleep with your own thoughts in your head, and whatever those thoughts are, the ones that you feel identify you. And I think maybe that's what it was. Maybe I went to bed every night thinking of Eric Stoltz. Maybe that's what happened.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
He was thinking of Eric Stoltz. I was thinking of Mary Stuart Masterson. It's all
This
good.
is the most progressive podcast. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's what it is.
Because when I watch it, even now, like I'm a much girlier girl than I was back then, but I still identify much more with Watts.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you brought up the fact that it basically is Pretty in Pink with what you called like the better ending. Of course, both of those films were written by John Hughes. The director assigned to this film was Howard Deutsch, and he was working on trying to cast the film, and he was really, really struggling. He could not cast the character of Keith. He was like, I can't find the right Keith. I don't know what to do. And so I'm going to bail on this project. And instead, I'm going to go and direct Pretty in Pink for John Hughes. And so while he was doing that, they brought in Martha Coolidge, who was the director of Valley Girl, to direct this film. And I guess the original script was a lot grittier. And that was what inspired Eric Stoltz to take the role. But John Hughes and Martha Coolidge had really different sort of artistic visions for this project, and they were not getting along. So she ended up being taken off of the project, and Hughes brought Deutsch back onto it. Okay, so he had gone and directed Pretty in Pink, and now he's back to basically direct the same movie with the better ending. But when he brought Deutsch back, Eric Stoltz was super bummed because he liked the Coolidge vision of this much more than Deutsch's sort of sanitized version for the, American teenage audience. So it caused like a lot of tension. Eric Stoltz and Deutsch just kind of like butt heads throughout this movie because it was just becoming something other than what he wanted. And Eric Stoltz said, "That's why I wanted to get involved, because the idea of making a darker version of Pretty in Pink that didn't have the duckies in it was intriguing, sort of like making a darker version of a kid's fairy tale." Mary Stuart Masterson ended up saying, "There was a first draft that was sort of like a broader sex comedy. It opened with Keith masturbating into his pillow." Like, can you imagine? This is like a very different movie. She says, "Also, my character was named Keith. And she wanted to be male. It was more about the issues between parents and kids. That Hughes stuff, it went deep." But that's not the movie we ended up with, you guys.
Wait, are you saying Watt's character was originally trans in the original?
Well, she's saying
writing?
that her character was named Keith and she wanted to be male.
So interesting. Oh, man. Now I wish we had seen the Coolidge version.
No. It's a really different movie. Through the development of this, John Hughes was a notorious workhorse. He worked all the time. I mean, I think he just had one of those brains that wouldn't stop. And Deutsch said that they would work so late sometimes in Hughes's office that he would just fall asleep on the couch. He said, quote, Hughes, would stay up all night, music blasting, and at like 5:30 or 6 a.m., he'd hand me what was supposed to be a rewrite on Some Kind of Wonderful. We needed 5 pages and it was 50 pages. And I said, "What did you do? What is this?" And he said, "Oh, I didn't do that. I did something else. Tell me what you think." And it was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He said he wrote the first half of the movie in like 8 hours and he finished it a couple of days later. Like, that was John Hughes.
Wow.
And, Kenny, you and I covered The Breakfast Club and we talked about how John Hughes banged that script out so fast in like a weekend. It was like no big thing.
So we covered that Kate loves this movie. I mentioned I love this movie. What are you fair to Midland, or where are you with this movie?
So I used to collect VHS movies when I was in high school, and this was one of them. I think the reason I bought this movie was because the kiss scene when she's, quote, teaching him how to kiss.
Oh boy. There's a lot to that one.
Yes, with the music behind it, like that is a damn near perfect scene. Like that sold it for me.
It's like, it's so erotic. Like,
oh,
the way they shot it and the way they did it. I'm like,
it blew me away. It did.
Yeah,
Like it blew my 16-year-old self away. I think I was 16 when I saw it and I was just like, wow.
For something so PG in terms of like,
yes, this is
the
a PG-13 film,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody has clothes on, like they're in the middle of a gas station, like. But yeah, and I think like what does it is when her leg like goes kind of around him, and then he grabs her, and you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yes, it's a whole thing.
It was very like, I don't know if scandalous is the right word, but it was very intriguing to my youthful coming of age experience.
Yeah. And I mean, can we just say the song She Loves Me by Stephen Duffy? Like, how good is that song in that moment?
Yeah.
It's so great.
That moment was so powerful. I remember liking boys that were my friends. And it's like, do you tell them? Do you not? It adds a real complication to this love story. And she doesn't want to lose the friendship. So I think I identified with that, maybe not on as deep of a level, but scary. It's risky.
It's very risky. I mean, I would think it's risky. I personally never had that sort of dilemma. I've secretly wanted that dilemma, like kind of going like, man, at this, I've seen enough shows and movies to go, people go through this. And I'm like, well, I want to be people too and go through this. But
I want to be in a love triangle too.
I'm trying to think. I think surprisingly, for the amount of like dating I have done, I don't think I've ever been in this situation.
You've never been in love with a friend.
Oh.
long pause.
Pause for dramatic effect.
Maybe there was, I mean, I don't know if I was in love with them, but definitely had a crush on them.
Deep like.
Did you like
I liked them? Yeah. And like, for sure, it would have been complicated if it wasn't reciprocal. And so I never... But then you go through that thing where you're like, but do they know? Can they like, am I like accidentally like broadcasting it when I don't mean to, but I like can't help it? It's complicated.
It's complicated.
Okay, we were talking about the things that we like about the film, but like one of the things that I don't really like about the film is that I don't really feel like Watts is putting it out there. How does he even know that she likes him other than the fact that she's got strong opinions about Amanda?
I mean, she wasn't really putting it out there. That's
she
I
wasn't.
get this.
Oh, I disagree, friends.
Oh, sweet.
Should we talk about the ways in which she is and isn't putting it out there as we go through the story?
Okay.
You let us know, because I feel like Keith in this situation, I was oblivious to all of this, despite the fact that she just didn't like Amanda.
I have like notes, like all throughout my notes. I'm just like, why is he so dumb? Why does he get it?
For real? Okay. We are going to explore that. So let's jump into this. It was released on February 27th, 1987. We open on a little montage where we meet the characters. We meet Tomboy Watts, played by Mary Stuart Masterson. She's playing the drums with her red fringed gloves.
Those gloves. I love them.
Iconic.
Like the Sheila E. gloves or something. I don't know. I don't know if it's
Awesome.
Sheila E., but it's something like that to me.
We see Amanda, played by Leah Thompson. She's making out with her boyfriend. They're totally going to do it. And then we meet Keith, played by Eric Stoltz. So this moment where he's walking on the railroad tracks and he skips off right before the train, I remember that so clearly. That left a really indelible impression on me, and I'm not really sure why. Did that mean something to you? Did you remember that?
I remembered it a lot, and I remember it like seeming really cool. And then now as an adult, I was like, that poor train engineer. Like, he doesn't know he's going to like veer off at the last second.
Are we setting the table on purpose? Like this whole suicide thing? Like I don't know. I guess I thought it was a little more grave.
I mean, first of all, truthfully, that train wasn't going that fast.
Right.
Like, I felt like it just sort of established him as not cool in the sense of like hardy, right? If you would call
Right.
Hardy cool.
Right.
Call him popular. But that, so it just sort of set up that contrast. I think that's how I view it.
I got it.
That's smart.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. This is kind of fun. Hughes named the three characters Keith, Watts, and Amanda Jones as a nod to the Rolling Stones. Keith Richards, Charlie Watts, and the Stones song Miss Amanda Jones.
It didn't even occur to me until preparing for this show. I was like, oh, it is. Did any of you guys pick up on it before?
Not at all.
Yeah, I knew the Amanda Jones part, obviously, but
Right.
I never put together the rest.
That's why.
Yeah,
Amazing.
interesting.
So at home, Keith has two sisters. He's got a kid sister, Cindy, played by Candace Cameron, and he's got a teenage sister, and they don't really get along that well. And Keith's dad is this like hardworking blue collar man who's really, really excited for Keith to go to college. Keith is a senior.
Like, one of the funnest things about going back to rewatch this was what a lovely slice of the 80s the entire film is.
That
Like,
house, the furniture, everything about the decor in his home. I was like, yes.
yeah, it's like middle class
Wood. There's so much wood.
1980s. Like, it was
so
so
much wood.
fun. The dishes, like, obviously it's not a period piece, right? Because that was what was common then. But it's so fun. Like, if somebody is ever doing a 1980s throwback, they need to go watch this film and just replicate everything there.
I want to replicate this. That's a thing for me. I want to replicate that exact thing in my house. Like I can't get buy off from everybody else in the house.
You want some wood paneling?
I want to come out of the bedroom and I want it to be an exact replica of the Family Ties house.
Nice.
But why not? That's what I'm thinking. Like, why would that bother anybody? But I mean, it bothers everybody in the house. But
I was going to say it bothers your wife.
It does. It definitely bothers her. But I'm thinking, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, but it doesn't have to be Family Ties. I mean, pick the house of your choice. But
Married with Children.
Yes, make it exactly. I don't know.
Okay, so Watts drives Keith to school on a suspended license. We don't know why she lost her license, but she does drive like shit, so maybe that's why. And these two are clearly best friends. For the casting of Keith, director Deutsch offered the role to Michael J. Fox originally, but he passed on it. And that's really interesting because Stoltz was originally cast as Marty McFly in Back to the Future. And I don't know why he was replaced by Michael J. Fox in that film, but you probably know, Kenny, because I know you're like a big Back to the Future fan.
Yeah, it just wasn't coming out the way they wanted. In Eric Stoltz, what I've read is it could be difficult as an actor. He's a more dramatic actor than a comedic actor, as we probably picked up on. Yeah, so he's...
Right, he was like Mask, right? Mask was his big thing.
Yes.
So yeah, you could see that like the actor.
It's funny because I don't see those two as interchangeable. And yet like here in both of these films, it's like they're both considered...
Right.
It's a different movie when you think about Michael J. Fox playing Keith, right? I mean, it's a completely different movie.
Oh my gosh.
It's much more of a Pretty in Pink movie.
Right.
Exactly.
Eric Stoltz brings the grit.
Yes, the grit. It's a little harsher than any of John Hughes' other films. Now, I understand why.
Yeah. For the character of Watts, Hughes actually wanted, any guesses?
Molly Ringwald.
Molly Ringwald again. And I don't want to talk shit on Molly Ringwald. God bless. We love her. But like, what? She was just in Pretty in Pink. She was just in this movie.
Right.
She told The Atlantic, I declined because I felt like the script wasn't strong enough. And it was too derivative of the other films I had already made with John. Hello, Pretty in Pink. He wanted me to play the role of a character called Watts. Watts, not Amanda. But I was ready to graduate from high school.
Could you imagine her and Michael J. Fox? Like this?
No.
This would not have been my favorite movie. And it is nothing against either of those two actors. They're so great in what they do. But like, it would have been a completely different movie.
But
totally
Molly Ringwald isn't like edgy. Isn't Watts edgy?
No.
Like, I don't think you could have given her the cropped blonde hair, hat, the white tank, the red gloves, and thought, oh, she is edgy. Like, I don't think the costuming and the hair would have been enough.
No.
So this is a fun bit of trivia. In regard to Watts's hair, at the time of her audition for this role, Masterson had just finished filming this movie called At Close Range, and she had really dark red hair. And she said, I didn't have it professionally dyed from a dark color to a light color. So when I did it, it almost all broke off. So she bleached her own hair. And Deutsch thought her hair was like perfect for the role. So they stuck with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It did. It was good. It was a good fit.
Yeah, it works, right?
I thought so. I mean, it was edgy. It fit with the tomboy persona. She looked very rock and roll.
Right. And it looked like hair that like a kid who doesn't have a lot of money, right? You could do that very inexpensively and at home yourself. So,
right. Kenny, do you think that aesthetic is like sexy or hot, or is that not an attractive look for you? Because I thought she looked amazing.
Yeah, I did too. Really, I think that look is very specific to, and I just mentioned cheekbones, but it's very specific to the shape of their face, right?
Sure.
If they can do that. And so if they can pull it off, some ladies can pull off a shaved head and it's like, it's perfectly fine.
Kate and I covered the Eurythmics, and like, we could not stop talking about Annie Lennox's bone structure. Like that entire episode, we were so obsessed with how beautiful that woman is. And she had short, buzzed orange hair, and she was the most beautiful woman ever. So,
right. And Mary Stuart Masterson, to me, she's always Juniper Pearl from Benny and June, which is it's not
such a great role.
I mean, she's always cute. You can't mess that up.
I agree. So Keith and Watts get to school, and they get into it with this like punk guy named Duncan who's giving him crap. In the library, Keith cannot stop staring at beautiful Amanda Jones as she flirts with her boyfriend. And then he's like sketching her. Let's talk about this trope about the guy sketching or painting the girl. This is everywhere. Why is this a thing?
I'm going to go with this thing that I heard somewhere. I didn't make it up, but that if you are into somebody, anything that they do seems really cool. And if you're not into them, anything that they do feels like they're stalking you.
We talked about that in Sleepless in Seattle. Yes.
Right. So this kind of falls into that, right? Like if you're really like into somebody and they're drawing your picture, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And if you're not into somebody, you're like, that's super creepy. So,
but like, he's just kind of always there. Like even in the opening credits, right? Like he sees her say goodbye to her boyfriend outside of her house. Like he's looming outside of her house. And then, you know, here he is in the library and he's like sketching her while she's with her boyfriend. And it's like awkward. He's just always there.
It seems very creepy, but to Kate's point, I have that same note going, you know, if the girl is into you, it's fine. If she's not, it's really creepy.
I think it also sort of establishes him as
an artiste.
Well, that was not what I was going to say. As like the other, right? Like it really, he's like outside looking in at like something that he's coveting her, right? He covets her.
Sure.
To his credit, is not actually creepy about it, which I don't know. Like when he's watching her come back to PE class after she's been with Hardy, he just kind of has this like amused look on his face, like, oh, look at her, like sneaking in with the other people. So I don't know, like it doesn't seem like he's like skeezy. And I think that is a skill because he could come off as really skeezy.
And I mean, we want to like him. So I guess it's okay.
Right.
We make allowances for it.
Right. Like Meg Ryan and Sleepless in Seattle, right? We're like, isn't she cute? When like... Really
legitimate stalker, you could go to jail for that behavior. Yes, totally. Yes. So Watts catches up with Keith to tell him, oh my God, your dad is at school. And his dad's talking to the guidance counselor about college options for Keith, which parents don't really do that anymore, I don't think. And the guidance counselor's like, you know, he has interest in art school. And his dad's like, he ain't going to art school. He's going to regular old college.
He goes to art school. What's he qualified to do?
Right.
He could be creative on his own time.
We're looking for a business program.
This is the best part. When the dad is walking out of the school and he spots his teenage daughter, Laura, in class through the window, and he knocks on the door and says hi, and she literally screams. Oh my God. Epic.
But like, what makes it so much better is his reaction, because he's kind of like, oh, what happened? And then he's like, oh, I think I did a bad thing. And then he goes away.
It is literally your only job as the parent of a teenager
to not
embarrass them. Like they want you around, but they don't want you around. So you need to be there and not there at the same time. You need to exist there, but stay completely under the radar. Kenny, is this your experience with your kids?
So my daughter's a freshman in high school, right? So you're in this transition period where you don't know if knocking on the door is appropriate to wave. You always think, well, I'm different. I mean, you know,
I'm a cool dad.
Cool. Yeah, I'm cool.
Okay, this is when Keith, because he's a lurker, he spots Amanda's boyfriend, Hardy, flirting with Mia, who is played by China Phillips. He gives her a little kiss. He's like, I'll stop by, you know, at your house this week. And Amanda catches him.
Well, and he's like, I want you to stay close, but not too close.
Yes. It's a winning line right there. That's a winning line.
Amanda sees this. She gets super pissed. And he's like, how can you be so beautiful and insecure at the same time? Trust is the basis of any relationship. I trust you. And that's when he gives her his ring.
He's such a gaslighter. He's the worst. And also, do you notice later when she throws that ring in the locker room, like the way it like clings on the floor, like that was not a high value ring.
I have to give him credit though, because there is something admirable about somebody who can deliver such a line and do it with, you know, a straight face and actually believe it.
He's a really good douchey dude. Like he
Right?
does it well.
He like embraces that.
We all know plenty of girls who fell for not exactly that line, but they fall for the Hardy Jens of the world, right? I mean,
I'm feeling very judged right now.
well,
Okay, but when you're young and you lack experience, and this person's popular and this guy's rich and like probably all the girls want him and he chose you. And even if he's choosing other people on the side, he's telling you that you're the one. You want to believe him. I don't know. I think it's an easy trap when you're young.
Well, he provides her a certain status.
For sure.
And so it's not just like, oh, let me walk away from him because he's being a jerk to me. It's like, well, if I walk away from him, like I now have no friends, I have no trips, nothing. So yeah. But then creeping in the background
I mean,
is Eric Stoltz.
As per always.
Jeez.
Okay, in terms of casting for Amanda Jones, did you know Kim Delaney was originally cast in the Amanda role? But once the director, Martha Coolidge, was released from the project, Deutsch really wanted Leah Thompson. But Leah Thompson didn't want the Amanda role because Watts was the better character. She said, I didn't want to play second banana. I was very jealous. So she had turned it down. She didn't want it. But then Howard the Duck came out in 1986 and totally flopped. It was like so bad.
So bad.
She said, it was a brutal bloodbath. I was so afraid to even look the crew in the eyes when she decided to take this role. She's like, I cried the very first day. I was like, I don't know how to act. I just felt so vulnerable and beaten. And she was like a hot mess during filming.
Well, she should be really glad that they didn't cast Michael J. Fox and Molly Ringwald alongside her.
I know.
She may never have acted again.
I mean, wow, right? And then for Hardy, Kyle MacLachlan, Trey McDougal from Sex and the City, and of course, the infamous Showgirls. He was originally cast as Hardy Jens.
And Twin Peaks, let's not forget.
Oh, and Twin Peaks. But again, once Coolidge was replaced by Deutsch, the role was recast and given to Craig Sheffer. So, I mean, I think Kyle MacLachlan could have played it, but I thought Craig Sheffer was fantastic.
Yeah, I think Craig Sheffer really, like, I had an acting teacher who used to say, like, nobody ever wants to play the bad guy really well because it suggests that there's, like, some part of you that maybe is that much of a jerk.
Oh.
How do we feel about Leah Thompson as Amanda Jones? Any thoughts on that? I've got thoughts.
I like her. So, I mean, I guess. I don't know. I think it was fine.
This feels terrible to say out loud as an adult woman, but as a young child of the patriarchy, I can remember thinking, like, she didn't feel pretty enough to me to be that role, which she's beautiful.
Oh my God,
like,
she's stunning.
But, like, she wasn't
blonde.
I think that's what it was.
I think it, honestly.
and
how ridiculous, right?
Like, she wasn't blonde and her haircut just didn't look like the popular girl's haircut to me in my head. Like, it's so dumb.
It wasn't feathered enough. Like, what was wrong with
honestly,
it?
For the 80s, it really was not feathered enough.
I think Leah Thompson is a beautiful woman, but for all the Amanda Jones hype, when they talk about how hot she is and all these things, and
she has a wholesome quality to her that doesn't make her like the sexy one. Like, she's so good in Back to the Future because she does have that wholesome quality.
Yes.
I feel like the casting was a little amiss, and we can blame Deutsch for that. And there's a deeper reason for that, which we will get into later.
Oh boy.
Okay, so this is when Keith is at work. He's like a mechanic at the gas station. And Watts is there hanging out with him. And he asks her, like, hey, what do you think of Amanda? And Watts, who always delivers the lines, right? She's like our wise Yoda.
Yes.
She has like those cutting philosophical lines. She says, don't go mistaking paradise for a pair of long legs.
Right.
It's Bob Dylan quality right there.
Yep.
Watts thinks Amanda runs with the rich and beautiful crowd, so he shouldn't even try. Like, you don't even have a chance in this, and you're too shy and too broke anyway. Thoughts on that, and then thoughts on the fact that Keith is so clearly wearing eyeliner in this scene. I cannot with this. Did you guys clock it?
I did not. I did not clock it.
Oh my God, go back. He is wearing aggressive eyeliner. Nowhere else in this film is it as bad as it is in this scene. And all I can figure is that, he's a ginger. So maybe he has like red or blonde eyelashes or something. And they just wanted to like
mascara.
So, okay, I digress. But like, what do you think about this? He doesn't have a shot with her because he's too shy and too broke?
I need to enter this into evidence as like point number 1. Hello, Keith. Watts is in love with you.
Because she says you don't have a chance?
Because she bristles so much at him asking her about this girl.
But she could have done that anyway, just as a friend, even if she didn't have like a love interest in him. Like, I just don't see you guys as
but
a match.
we're going to string together all of these points. And this is point number 1.
This is 1A?
Yes.
Into evidence. Okay.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this, Kenny?
Yeah, I mean, it's like she's protesting a little too much, I guess. I don't know.
But
I mean,
maybe
is that
she
how
just
that works?
doesn't want him to get hurt. Like, she loves him, maybe just as a friend right now, and that's how he's taking it. Like, you're going to get hurt. Don't do it, dude. But also, like, in her mind, Amanda represents all of the things that Watts isn't and doesn't like. Maybe because Watts feels so left of center, doesn't understand that popularity world, all of that she's just like, ugh, no, don't even. Like, I don't like those people.
See, I think it's like, how could you like her? I think the depth of it, right? It's like, I like you. I want you to like me. And you like her?
Like she's everything I'm not.
Exactly. Like, oh my God. Haven't you ever had that where you're like, I love this person and I see all of their wonderful qualities and all they want is this person who's just going to like treat them like shit and not appreciate them. And this is terrible. Clearly I identify with Watts.
You see that because you are in love with them or because you feel like I know you really well as a person and you deserve so much better than this.
I think the intensity of it is what gives it away.
Okay. I can see how he missed it.
I can see how he missed it. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. It's the beginning, right? Because like, I think she feels a sense of ownership of him and now he wants to go to the other.
Ownership of him. Yes. That's the key right there.
Or protection.
No, I think she feels like he's mine. Okay. Whether it's romantic or friendship or whatever, like he's mine. And now he wants to go be part of this other group and I can't go. I can't be part of that group.
Ooh.
Okay. So this is when Hardy and Amanda pull up at the service station in Hardy's convertible Vet. He's a total asshole to Keith when he orders him to like check the oil and then he honks the horn while he's under the hood. And he's like, oh, you like looking at my girlfriend, huh? Keep your eyes and your mind off my property.
There's 10 for the gas and 10 for the look.
Ooh.
Yes.
And Watts, I don't know if she says it prior to this scene or after, but she says, well, obviously she gets off on it.
I don't know if she like gets off on it, but it doesn't bother her enough to step away from it.
Right. It can't be the first time that Hardy Jens has behaved this way, right?
No. You know he's mean to wait staff, even if he dresses like a waiter.
Even though he looks exactly like one.
Right.
And Eric Stoltz does a great acting job in that whole part.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
It's so understated. I mean, it's just so good.
You know what's funny though? So when I was younger, it took me a long time to figure out what he was actually doing. I think I had to watch it many times before I was like, oh, because he stole the dipstick.
Yes.
Out of the car. So I was watching this time. You never see where the dipstick was this whole time. He just all of a sudden like has it in his hand and throws it away. Like there's like an edit. And I was like, oh, I wanted to see him like, I don't know, like have it like up his sleeve or something.
You get the sense that on the cutting room floor, there was some follow-up where Hardy's car has an issue.
I would have loved to have seen it. So the next day, Hardy drops Amanda off late to PE, where, of course, Keith is there and he's watching. And he sees her get a detention for being late. And so he's like, okay, a detention is the best idea ever. So I want to spend some time with her. So he pulls the fire alarm. It's time for detention. And he's stoked because he's like, this is my opportunity to spend time with her. And when he arrives, he realizes detention is a really scary place because it is. And Amanda's not there. Crap. Right. And he's there with all the misfits.
And he's like dressed up, right?
Yes. All the kids in detention are like so sketch. They're so scary, right? Like tearing a book and breaking a pencil. They're like, you're a dead man. I loved it.
Which, had she actually served detention, it would have been a really genius move, because she probably would have been like, I've seen you before. You're the least scary person in this room. Let's hang out.
I totally agree with you. But like, can you blame her for not wanting to go to detention?
Right.
And so what does she do? She flirts her way out of detention.
At the time, did not disturb me at all.
Right. Now, totally problematic.
Now I'm like, ew, what is wrong with that teacher?
I loved it when she was like, I love the way you do your hair.
All the girls say so.
He's like, oh.
And like she reaches out and like touches his tie. And I'm like, no.
So in the next scene, Watts and Keith talk about Amanda. And again, Watts is like, don't do it. And he's like, you don't know how I feel. You don't know how strong these feelings are. And she insists that she does. Okay, I will take this as evidence 1B, to your point, Kate.
Yeah.
He says, you've been in love before. And she says, there's a lot you don't know about me.
It's subtle. She's not just going to be like, yo, Keith, I love you. Like, right? That's not her.
Right. Well, in detention, Keith is forging a very unlikely friendship with Duncan. It's kind of adorable. I'm into this friendship. What do you guys think about it?
And I have a note here about when he does the vandalism on the desk. When he pops it off of the actual frame, like it takes him like 3 times to do it. That was genius. I'm like, man, it's really good. I loved it.
We're now in the girls' locker room, which of course is a mainstay of any good 80s teen film. And we get to see Amanda strike her sexy pose in her tank top with no bra and her jockey underwear. And Watts is looking at her.
Yeah. So here's another John Hughes, like, common thing, right?
Yes.
Like, and I'm trying to remember. Now, I know there was at least like 1 or 2 girls who really were like the naked girls in the locker room, right? Like they would like take off all their clothes and walk around and think nothing of it. But for the most part, my experience of locker rooms was girls like trying to get dressed as quickly as they could with their back turned to like their locker, or like their back turned and
you're like trying to shield your body with your locker door. Like it's like you're doing everything in your power.
No one took showers.
Oh God, no.
And like if you did, because it was like swimming or something, you would like go in your swimsuit and rinse off. And I'm like, why is it in John Hughes films people are always like super naked and prancing around the
But it's not just John Hughes films, it's every 80s film ever.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's now nighttime and the teens of the town are all like hanging out at the local spot. And once again, Hardy is flirting with another girl and Amanda is super over it. She breaks things off with him. Keith witnesses this whole thing, of course, because he's a stalker. He's right there. And he seizes this opportunity to call Amanda over and ask her out.
It's so awkward.
I think he knew what he was doing, right? I mean, he'd already seen the China Phillips episode, right?
Yeah.
So he was kind of like timing it. Like, I'm going to pounce now and catch her at this moment where it could be that he's saving her.
But wouldn't he also be thinking like she's just saying yes to get back at him? Like this is not an emphatic yes.
So I think he went there with the intention of asking her out. But then I think this situation presented itself and he was like, okay. But like, as much as he likes her, there's like animosity between them, right? That like really comes out when they're on the date. But even here, you see it where he's like, I'm going to like kind of call you on this situation you're in and see, are you going to take the opportunity to step away? And she kind of sees that he's doing that, but is like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm kind of annoyed, but I'm going to do it.
I missed that. Like totally over my head.
Well, it is my favorite movie. So.
Interesting. No, it makes sense. Wow.
Okay. So it's now breakfast time at the Nelson house and everyone is sitting around the table, which
for breakfast, did you do that?
No,
Do
nobody
families
does
do
that.
that?
That's not real.
Right.
That never happened one time. I get the impression that the Nelsons eat breakfast and dinner together as a family every single day.
Right.
Yeah.
With milk.
So Keith is in totally good spirits, which is really out of character. And his family's like, what's up with him? And he's started calling his parents by their first names. I love that because, they're
Right.
equals
Clifford.
now.
Carol.
This is when his sister Laura tells the family of the rumor that's going around about Keith and Amanda's upcoming date. And the dad doesn't care about this. He only cares about college. He brings up college again. And Laura, the sister, is like, ease up, Dad. Any fool can get into college. Only a precious few may say the same about Amanda Jones.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Zinger.
So at school, Watts is really bumming hard about this Keith Amanda thing. So this is when she tries to get that guy Ray to like hang all over her and make Keith jealous. Ray tells her, people think that she's confused.
We keep talking about Watts. We keep talking about her being a boy and all this stuff and all that. But again, it's Mary Stuart Masterson is clearly not a boy.
No.
And she clearly is adorable and she's very cute.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it that much harder. I think that's why we're giving Keith such a hard time for not seeing it. She's clearly not somebody you would ignore.
Because there's this like underlying idea that kind of floats through the whole thing of like Watts is a lesbian.
Uh-huh.
But I don't get the sense that Keith thinks that.
I don't either.
That would be one thing if he thought that. And so that was his reasoning for being like, well, she's not into me. But I don't get that vibe from him ever. And now that you told me the thing about like the original script, I'm like, how many of these lines are left over?
Yes, Watts as Keith, who wanted to be a boy. Right? That's what Mary Stuart Masterson said. It's a poor rewrite.
Like things that got left in, but like maybe made more sense in the other context.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. In the Coolidge version.
Yeah.
Keith asks to borrow Watts's car because he wants to give Amanda a ride home. She reluctantly agrees to go. She doesn't really want to, but Watts's car won't start. And he's so pissed. He just drops the keys into the car and does not even bother telling Watts, which was super crappy because he told Watts, like, I'll be back in like an hour. He didn't even take her car. He just left. I mean, Amanda's able to nab a ride from her friend Shane. She gets Keith a ride home also, and they just leave. And here Watts is at the school waiting. Her car is still there with the keys inside. She doesn't even know it. What an asshole, Keith.
That is a weird move.
Yeah. Well, and also anyone who drove an old car knows you can't just keep at the engine like that. You'll flood it. Like I had an old car and
Keith
you can
is
do
a
it like
mechanic. He should know these things.
It's true.
I forgot that. He's a mechanic. Yeah, he's a mechanic. Why doesn't he fix her car?
I mean, is he really a mechanic though? Like he changes oil, I think. I don't think
Okay,
he's,
but
like,
he knows more than like the average teenager with a beater car.
probably
right?
True. Yeah.
Okay, Keith doesn't care about Watts, clearly. He's in the car
Right.
with Shane and Amanda, and this is when he compliments Amanda's diamond earrings.
Yeah.
And he finds out they're not actually Amanda's diamond earrings. She borrowed them from Shane. In the next scene, Keith is working on a painting in the art studio at school. And this is when Hardy waltzes in his signature blazer.
Right.
Keith like quickly and nervously covers the painting. Hardy tells Keith, hey man, like I was looking for a way out with Amanda. So like, thanks for that. And I'm a good guy. I don't want to be mad at you. Why don't you and Amanda come to my house for a party? My parents are going to be in Europe. They're so rich. They're going to be in Europe and I'm having a party. Come over. And Keith is like, obviously cautious about his motives. Hardy tells him, oh, Amanda's totally cool with it.
And like this whole scene makes me like physically uncomfortable because like to his credit, Keith doesn't just let it go, right? Like he keeps being like, yeah, but you can understand why I'm cautious. And Hardy just like doubles down on it every time. Like he's just like, come on.
Says to him, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing in the world if you and I turned out to be friends. And Keith is like, yes, it would. We're now at a club and Watts shows up. She looks like she's been crying, like pretty crying. And she asks Keith, where's Amanda? she says, maybe she doesn't like you as much as you think.
Yeah.
This I can put into evidence, Kate. Watts says, do you miss me? Do you miss being around me? And this is when Keith says, this isn't third grade anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And Watts is like, she doesn't love you. It's a joke. Keith asks her, how does she know? And she says, I'd bet my hands on it. And he tells her, you don't want to make that bet.
Oh, this scene. I get all the feels from this scene.
Yes.
This is where I'm like, okay, now you're really blind, friend. You're really blind. Through this whole time, she's kind of had this, mask over her feelings. And now she's to this point where she can't really keep it all bottled up and it's bubbling over and he still doesn't get it. And he just thinks it's all about him. But for a drummer to bet her hands, that's a huge thing.
It's a powerful line, but nowhere in this does she say her true feelings. She's saying we're driving each other crazy and I don't want you to hate me. The only things I care about in this goddamn life are me and my drums and you. ... As a friend, ?
To the point that I'm crying and like upset. Like that's where I'm really like, okay, Keith, come on.
But she had every opportunity to just say the thing.
He's obsessed with the girl. Why would you choose that moment to say the thing?
It feels like a big jump from where we were with these two. And now we're here and she still can't say the thing. That's my problem.
As much as she said, I mean, that's saying the thing.
I don't think it's the words.
Yeah, it's not the words, right?
Like, he's not just her friend. Like, he's her person.
I mean, okay, I guess you all are thinking she's saying the thing.
She's saying and showing and doing. Yeah, it's all there.
But he does come around a little bit, right? He's like, wait a minute.
At the end, he's kind of like, wait, what just happened?
Right.
Yeah, he looks shell-shocked.
Yes.
Yeah.
But not shell-shocked in that my best friend is in love with me. Shell-shocked in what was that?
Right. Like, what just happened? But like, one might think he could take the other pieces of evidence we've had so far and been like, oh, wait, maybe? But no, he doesn't.
So this is the scene where we're now at school and Hardy follows Amanda into the girls' locker room. Then Keith's sister overhears Hardy's plan to nail him at the party, and she has to break the news to Keith. And she thinks Amanda is in on it too. It's a sad thing, right? Like having to break this news, but this is the first time these two have like a genuine moment together.
Right.
Obviously Keith is really upset. This is when he goes to visit Watts. He tells her, you were right. And Watts is like, you can't go to that party, but he insists on standing up to him. So what do you guys think about Keith insisting on going to the party to face Hardy?
I think he already has a plan. He knew something was up. Like, where it gets confusing is like, she really isn't in on it.
Right. But my question is if he tells Watts, oh, you were right, and he thinks Amanda is in on it, why does he still want to go on the date with Amanda? Why does he still give her diamond earrings? Why does he still do all the things that he does?
Then it's sort of like Keith gets his revenge because he doesn't give her the diamond earrings to make her feel special. Exactly. He kind of gives her the diamond earrings to make her feel bad.
Okay. What about the painting?
Well, he had already.
And he takes her out on this nice date.
Right. Well, he had all these pieces in motion.
He hadn't even bought the earrings yet, Katie.
But he still had the idea. Like, he had the idea of what this date was going to be, what he was going to do on this big date with Amanda Jones. And then this wrench gets thrown into it.
Right. So I'm going to spend all of my hard-earned money, my entire future to execute this plan?
Essentially. Because he wants to matter, right? He wants to do something that matters. And sadly, he's choosing to matter to Amanda Jones instead of the person that he actually matters to.
Wait, how is he going to matter to Amanda Jones if she's in on this joke and he thinks that she's in on this joke?
Because he's going to make her feel like a piece of shit if he gives her these super expensive earrings.
He makes her feel like a piece of shit. So what?
It's going to make him feel better. Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Sometimes you'd rather be right.
I don't even get the impression that that's why he's doing this. I feel like something really critical, was cut out. I don't understand his motivation. It would be one thing if he didn't believe his sister. It would be one thing if he doubled down on the fact that this is not a joke. There's no way my perfect Amanda Jones could be in on this. I don't believe it.
He even explains it to his dad when his dad's like, what did you do? And he's like, you know, like, weren't there like weird kids at your school? And like,
yeah, this is my chance to go out with the Amanda Jones, the girl that everybody wants. I get it. This is his chance to do that. But like his entire future. So let's just skip ahead. He takes all of his money that he has ever worked for, and he decides to buy Amanda diamond earrings because she doesn't have a pair.
I will admit, it's an odd plot point. It's weird.
That's it. It's weird. The end. Also, how weird would you feel on a first date with someone they gave you a pair of diamond earrings? I would be so uncomfortable by that.
Oh, for sure. I would not take them, to be totally
God,
honest.
me neither.
It's a weird move.
Like, their whole date is just awkward and painful in so many points.
Let's get into it. It's the day of the date. This is the scene where Keith is at work before his date and they have the kiss.
Yes.
Watts and Keith practice the kiss. And I know we talked about it at the start of the pod, but God, that's such a good scene. It gives me all the feelings.
Yeah. I can remember just being like, I want to kiss someone like that. Like, it's like goals.
Kenny called it erotic. I thought that was super passionate. I love Watts in this scene though, because she's playing it off like, okay, do you want to practice? Can you deliver a kiss that kills? And he's like, I thought I could, but
I'm trying to help you. I'm doing you a favor. Like, I could leave right now.
I know. And I love it when she's like, pretend I'm her. And then she goes, I know it's a stretch, but try.
Right.
Love it.
And then she's like, did I scare you?
So of course they have this kiss and they have chemistry, and she pushes him off and she's like, class is over. You're cool. Like, whew,
right.
That's it. And like, she just needs to leave. And Keith is like, you're blushing. And then he goes, you're pretty. It's like he hadn't seen it before that moment.
Well, it's like he hadn't seen that she was like a girl, right? He had seen that like she was his friend. And like in that moment, he's like, oh, who is this before me? Also, where did Watts learn to kiss like this?
Because they never say that like Watts had a relationship before or that he had a relationship before.
Right. No, like presumably this is both of their first kisses, which like, oh, to have that as your first kiss. Mine was not that remarkable.
Mine wasn't either.
Again, it's really tough, right? I mean, it's tough because, you know, as much as they try to make Watts not be so attractive
and kissable,
but she is, right? I mean, it's really a hard sell. It's clearly that she's into him at this point.
And even if you didn't, as soon as you kissed and had that like, whoa,
then you would know.
Haven't you had that where you kiss someone and you're like, whoa,
right?
Like,
yes, but still, I don't get the impression, even though they have this great kiss, this leads me to the end of the film, that he felt the same way.
I think, again, we have like bewildered Keith, right? Like in the club, he was like, wait, what just happened? And I feel like, again, he's like, wait, what just happened? Yeah.
Okay. He's not ready to piece it together yet. All right.
I'm so smart. I can come up with this very elaborate plan for this date and this party.
Right.
But like the girl I've known my whole life who's pretty cute and is a good kisser and is like really missing me. I don't know what that's about.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, I have a date.
He's got a date with Amanda Jones. He's got to see how that plays out. So we see them all getting ready for the date. This is when his dad freaks out that he's spent the money and they have their come to Jesus.
I have to say, to his dad's credit, when he comes into the room after getting out of the shower, he doesn't immediately explode. He says, I want to know what's wrong. Are you in trouble?
Right.
And I'm like, what a good dad.
Because that would not have been my reaction. I would have blown up.
Right. I know. And I was like, huh, good for you, Dad.
Keith is comfortable confronting his dad about it. He wasn't cowering to him. Like, and clearly the house is filled with love and the whole dinner and breakfast.
All that family dining.
All that family dining. You know, I felt like John Hughes or the writer did a very good job of depicting a somewhat realistic argument that could have been something where the guy's angry, but he still loves his son to listen to his son. And
yeah. Okay. So now Keith in his suit picks up Amanda in her red business suit and cowboy boots for their date. And Watts third wheels it by dressing like the chauffeur and acting as the chauffeur.
How do we feel about that? Because
I feel like it was weird. I think that's all I have to say about that.
It's a tough situation, right?
And then they go to this fancy restaurant and he orders them the beluga caviar. She doesn't even know what that is.
Right.
And Keith is like, I thought you were an uptown girl. And she's offended by this. Like, I don't know why he thinks she's an uptown girl when he knows where she lives and he knows that they don't come from money. I know she runs with a rich crowd, but like, that's kind of weird.
And this plays into Kate's earlier point. Like, is he gaslighting her?
Is he manipulative?
Yeah. Is he partially into her, but partially like gaslighting her? Is this whole thing? Because it gets real complex at this point.
He could sense that it was going south. And so he orders her a burger.
But also he's drinking milk at the restaurant.
Why?
She's drinking champagne and he's drinking milk.
I'm getting a whole different light on Keith that I didn't catch immediately, but I think that's probably what was happening was, do I like him or is he just an angry individual? I don't know.
So by the end of this podcast, you're basically saying you're going to hate this movie now. Like you thought you loved it. That's what we do here at the Untitled Gen X. We take beloved classics and we ruin them.
I still love it, but I think I loved it for these exact reasons where it's just all 97 minutes of it. It's just troubling. Like there's an undercurrent that's troubling about it. Right. I mean,
it was a grittier film.
It's definitely grittier.
Like kind of gritty, but sanitized.
Right. It's not the grittiest it could be, but it's grittier than your standard John Hughes film.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that he's 100% convinced that she's in on it, but I think he's like not convinced that she's not in on it. So he's sort of dancing this line between like, I really like you, but then like also maybe you're an asshole. So I'm going to be an asshole to you.
Okay.
Like when I think of John Hughes films, we've done Breakfast Club and it wasn't this confusing. This one really is genuinely, I'm perplexed by what's happening here with these characters.
I feel like it lacks cohesiveness, or I feel like there's critical elements that are missing.
These people have all ended up in this circumstance through this like really weird turn of events. And like nobody actually wants to be in it. But like they're all there, so they have to like muddle through it, and there's complex feelings. And like in that sense, I feel like this probably also is left over from the grittier version.
Yeah.
But we're missing some context.
Yeah. As they leave the restaurant, this is when Watts gets kind of passive aggressive with Keith, right?
Right.
She drives super shitty so Amanda can't put on her lipstick, which is classic. Right.
This is when like everyone realizes like, ooh, there's tension.
Right. The tension is building.
This is where Keith feels like truly like he's the man, right? Like these two girls are going to fight for him.
You know what, though? I still don't think he gets it. I think he's kind of like, wow, Watts really doesn't like Amanda. But like...
he's thinking to himself, wow, she's really not into Amanda. Why?
Right. But I do think that this is like when Amanda's like, oh, I see.
Absolutely. Yes. Girl to girl, she gets it. So They arrive at the museum, and this is when Watts says to Amanda, you break his heart, I break your face. So now it's getting physical. Like the threats are getting physical.
Amanda was like, oh, like now I definitely get it. I don't know why Keith doesn't get it, but I definitely get it.
And it's very 80s line, right? Break his heart, I break your face.
Right.
All the Watts lines.
They're good. They're classic. So he's taken her to this museum. It's closed, right? It's after dark, but Duncan's dad works there and got them in. And so he takes her to show her the painting that he painted of her. Like, I don't know how he found the wall space.
And the frame, like that's not a cheap frame.
And he just like hung it on the wall in this museum?
Maybe he took down a really important piece of art.
He just went in there.
Didn't have an alarm on it or anything.
He moved to Van Gogh. It's fine.
Like this, I'll get rid of this one. This is my church, but I'm going to desecrate it right now.
Right.
With my own work.
Right.
So this painting of her, she's like looking sad and leaning against the walls. It's a very sort of solemn depiction of her. What do you guys think of the painting?
I think it's cheesy.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good painting. Yeah,
okay.
It's a good painting.
It's supposed to like show like the angst of her soul and like, I don't know. I don't like things like that.
She doesn't know what to say. I feel like we don't know what to say.
Right.
Nobody speaks any words.
Right.
And meanwhile, Watts is like crying in the car. This is interesting. This is good trivia. The director, Deutsch, he had a big old crush on Leah Thompson, which was why he wanted her in the movie. And he had upwards of 10 paintings of her commissioned for the film.
Oh, boy.
Oh, so he is the creeper.
Right.
I see.
This is life imitating art imitating life, whatever.
Leah Thompson said there were all these paintings and they were all lined up on the soundstage. And he, Deutsch, kept saying, no, it's not good enough. They must have spent $40,000 on those paintings. So she only ended up keeping 2 of them. There were like 10 or 11 of them. And she said, quote, I should have kept the other ones because people will tell me they're touring the prop house at Paramount. And they're like, I saw 9 paintings of you in the prop house. How awkward. But in the end, she ended up marrying Deutsch in 1989.
No, I'm disturbed by this.
They have 2 kids together and they're still married today.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow. Well, he got his Amanda Jones. Look at
right.
He did.
It does work.
I mean, it worked for them. I don't know that it works for this scene, but
where's his Watts? You have to ask. Is there some broken-hearted girl out there?
That's true. Playing a 3/4 beat, a swing beat.
I'm not sure how I feel. I mean, good for them because it sounds like they love each other and have a happy life. So yay. But like, I have weird feelings about it.
Now these kids are at the Hollywood Bowl alone at night. This is when things get deep between these two. Amanda tells him, I'd rather be next to somebody for the wrong reasons than alone for the right ones. So before they could stand together, they had to stand alone. I don't know. Is that the tie-in?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that's kind of where they were
going with like, that.
It's not like they stand together. It's a bad tagline.
Yeah. And Keith confronts her about how tonight is a joke, how the date is a joke, and that she used him. And she admits that she did in a way. And then she calls him out for using her. She's like, you're using me to pay back every guy with more money and more power than you.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah. And he admits it. He says, you're right. I'm sorry.
Man, this movie really is deep.
It's deep. It's dark.
It's dark.
I mean, I guess they decide to call it even and they hold hands. And this is when he gives her the box and says, in this box is my future. Every cent I ever earned is for you. Hello, no pressure or anything.
Right.
And she's floored by these diamond earrings. She insists that she can't take them. She does end up taking them, though. I mean, they kiss and they walk out to the car together holding hands. And Watts is like, I don't even want to drive you to Hardy's party, but she ends up doing it anyway. And this is when they get to the party and they walk in and Hardy greets them. Oh, this is so 80s, Kenny.
Yes.
Hardy asks when they walk in, he asks Keith, did she do you? This line.
That's great.
So gross.
And then he says, the one thing I'm glad about is that you get her used.
What a jerk.
It's so classic.
So Keith pushes Hardy and Hardy like summons his people, his minions to take Keith outside. And Keith is like, how about you take me outside? And he's like, I can't. I'm the host.
Right.
I have people here. That would be such bad etiquette.
I'm nothing if not a man of etiquette. Amanda wants them to let Keith go. And she tells Hardy that she'll go back with him. Like if he lets him go and he's like, I want you to beg.
Right.
He's so gross.
Ugh, it's so terrible.
This is when Keith's detention buddies storm into the party, and Duncan threatens Hardy. Hardy tries to talk his way out of it, but ends up looking like a total coward in front of everyone.
I can remember there were times at certain parties where there was planned fights or calculated fights. So I think it really did happen, those kinds of things. And maybe not the whispering and then people want, but it was very much like, oh, there was this anticipation of confrontation, if you will.
So like a deliberate setup?
Not so much a setup, but it was like, yeah, if so-and-so does show up.
Okay.
So as much as I wanted to say that this was a little cheesy and over the top, it was closer than I'd care to admit. But the whole begging bit and the whole thing, it's just, you hate Craig Sheffer right at the end of this whole thing.
Oh my gosh. Like Hardy clearly just wanted to humiliate her in front of a crowd.
Right. Which is why it's so lovely when like Duncan and his friends come in and they rescue everyone from that. But then also he's not going to hurt anybody. He's like, we might like make him sweat or whatever, make him nervous, but like, we're not going to hurt anybody, so like here, all of the kind of outcasts end up being like the totally decent
the good
humans.
Guys. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's usually how it works, right? It's usually the outcasts that are.
Totally.
Also, like I wrote this in my notes because it is really a good line when he comes in and he's like, this must be a hen house because I don't see nothing but chicken shit.
Oh, such a good line.
And that guy's great.
And like, I love it when he puts his head on Amanda's shoulder. Oh my God, such a good move.
And then that scene where like Shane like looks at the guy with the sunglasses, like, oh.
I love it. It's so good. Amanda feels empowered by all of this. And she tells Hardy that you're over, and she slaps him twice. Oh, it was such a move.
Yeah. Like normally I'm not a fan of, violence, but he was particularly horrible.
Yes.
And it was the 80s.
Right.
So, okay, they decide to leave the party, and Watts apologizes to Amanda for misjudging her. She walks away.
And I think part of it is she thinks, well, she's not as terrible as I thought she was. So fine, if this is what he wants, fine. I love him. I'll let him have what he wants.
She's kind of reached that point where, what more can I do? I was here to protect him. I was here to kind of be on his side, but he's kind of, Duncan's already been involved. And so now she's kind of feeling probably foolish, I guess. But again, going back to, she really loves him. So
she does. And so she's walking away, and she's walking away in tears. And Amanda tells Keith, I'd rather be right and stand on my own. It's worth noting, though, that when Leah Thompson was considering taking the role of Amanda, it was really important to her that her character had more depth. She said, I was a really strong feminist as a young person, and I always tried to break down the barriers of the female stereotypes in interesting ways. I felt too many things were dependent on her physical beauty, and I didn't feel I was beautiful enough to carry that off. Thus, I felt my character should have more inner beauty. Did you guys feel like her character had a lot of inner beauty?
I did not. I didn't see what she was into that would have caused me to go, oh, she's deep.
She's deep, yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, she wasn't horribly shallow, right? Like, she did have the sort of understanding that she was wanting things that were like above kind of her station that she was in the world, and that kind of, so like she had a little bit of a conflict, but I don't know that I saw like it wasn't like she was nice to old ladies or liked animals or had anything like, the nicest thing she did was at the gas station to be like, cut it out when Hardy was being a jerk. Does that equal inner beauty? Like,
right. Like, I didn't even see her necessarily try with Watts. Like, if Watts was such a good friend, and obviously we know that Keith and Watts are best friends, and that's, I'm assuming, well known on campus, right? So like, if she really had all this like depth and inner beauty, then like, I feel like she would have maybe tried a little harder with Watts. I mean, she's the third wheel on this date. It's kind of awkward and weird, but like Deutsch and Hughes really wanted to make Leah Thompson happy. So they rewrote her character to be, quote, far more sympathetic. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means in terms of her character. Far more sympathetic to what?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they just like highlighted sort of her struggle more so that it was like understandable sort of why she put up with like the idea that she was a decent person, but she really wanted these things that she couldn't access any other way. So, but that's not the same as inner beauty in my opinion. And honestly, like this moment that you're talking about where she's like, you know, it's going to feel good to stand on my own. I wonder if this was added because it feels awkward to me. Like there's just something in this scene where I'm like, why does this make me so uncomfortable? Like why like something's off and it may be that they like added that in late and so it just doesn't quite flow
Again, it's a
with
little
everything
disjointed.
else.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, there's some dissonance going on there. So
if she would have attended detention, we would have seen her interact with Duncan or that crew, like something that made it seem like she had this different side of her. Because
right,
the biggest we get of her is that she lives in that house that's, you know, on the other side of the tracks. You know, that's the deepest we get.
Deep.
Yeah,
right.
We don't even get any other sense. Like
it's not even like she's taking care of an ailing grandmother in this, you know, house on the wrong side of the tracks. It's just. And maybe it got edited out. Maybe it was there and it was edited.
And I think it's important that we recognize that just because someone isn't shallow, it doesn't mean she's deep.
I like that. A lack of shallowness doesn't make you deep. I like that. You know.
So this is when Amanda decides, I'm not shallow. I don't need these material things. And she gives the earrings back to Keith and she tells him to go after Watts. And he gives her a kiss on the cheek and they say their little goodbye.
What she says to him is, in your heart, you wanted to give these to somebody else.
Yes.
Do you think that that's true? Because I think no.
I think no. Also, I told you from the very beginning, I never saw this love connection from him to her. There's never a glimpse of it, even when they're kissing.
Right. They could have just had like one brief moment after she leaves of him being like, huh.
Yes.
You know,
a look, a pensive moment, something.
Right.
And so that's just a weird part too. Like I feel like they like added that part in oddly somewhere because like I can buy that he like recognizes this in that moment and is like, okay, like, let's do this. But not that he had these deep festering feelings that he was suppressing.
Right. It's like we wanted to see a little glimmer of that he saw Watts in that manner, especially in that kissing scene, that there could have been a moment where he kind of pulls away and is like,
the most we get is you're blushing. Right. You're pretty. It's like, was that the first time he ever saw her and thought that she was actually pretty? And what does that mean? Does that mean I have feelings for you because I think that you look pretty in this moment? No, it's weird. Right. Again, a really big disconnect. And so for him to all of a sudden be running after Watts, you know, like, don't be upset or it's okay, or we're still friends, or I care about you. Yeah. But no, it's like he's running after her. And then he picks her up and spins her around. And then they have this passionate kiss. And you're like, what? I just got whiplash. Like, what just happened?
No, that part I'm okay with.
You are?
I am. I'm okay with that because I think that does happen sometimes where like you don't realize something that was right in front of your face.
Okay, fair. But we don't see the realization. We don't see that moment.
Right. It kind of gets told to him by Amanda, right? It's not like we see.
Well, if Amanda says it, it must be right.
And I do feel like when they come together that like, I believe him. I believe that he has feelings for her in that moment. I just don't believe that like hitherto that moment, he had those feelings.
Right. Something must be on the cutting room floor that helped us.
Something really important is on that cutting room floor.
Yeah, because to your point, when it's almost like you're watching a different movie, it's like all of a sudden, like it's like we invented it in our head this was coming, you know?
It wouldn't have taken a lot. Like, because like when they come out of the party and it's clear that Watts has been crying, we could have had what, you know, my acting teacher used to like to call beautiful actor moments. We could have had a beautiful actor moment of him being like, oh, you know, but we didn't even get that. Like we get it from Amanda of being like, yeah.
Okay,
like,
so let me ask you this. If Amanda hadn't told him, I think I want to stand on my own.
He wouldn't have gone.
Exactly. Keith would have just been with Amanda. It's not like he would have been like,
Right.
you know what? I had this realization somewhere in the party that, you know what? I really want to be with Watts. No, he would be with Amanda right now if Amanda didn't like let him go.
Right. It's true.
So he would have just said, well, there she goes. Okay. And then he would have drove them home. Him and Amanda.
Yeah, I think he kind of would have been
Watts
like,
would just be walking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote down in my notes that when he picks her up and spins her around and they have that kiss, he apologizes because he didn't know. Did he actually do that? Or did I? I can't remember.
No, because she says, yeah, well, you're stupid. I always knew you were stupid.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that's why I can buy it. That it's just all of a sudden clicking. And I think that does happen sometimes where you're like, okay, yeah, no, I feel this too. Like,
but only because the other person let him
but something
go.
has to happen to make it click. And he's obviously he has missed this whole time.
Well, he is stupid. So Watts is right. You're stupid.
Right.
Maybe it was like an awakening where everything just kind of came into extreme focus, where he was in a daze walking out with Amanda, but then when she said, it all just kind of clicked. I mean, that's possible too.
I mean, he was drunk on Amanda and then she sobered him up.
Yeah.
He then gives the earrings to Watts and says, you knew you were going to get these.
Yeah. See, now it's getting.
No, she didn't. She was like, I didn't. Well, I hoped. No, I don't believe that she knew she was going to get them. And I don't believe that she hoped.
Oh, I think she hoped because she essentially picked them out. But I don't think she thought she had a snowball's chance in hell of getting them.
So this is a very long game on all their parts.
Never underestimate the ability of a girl to hope in an unrequited love circumstance.
You're right.
Wow. Is that, you guys say it so resoundingly? Is that it's okay?
Yes. Yeah. Trust me. I sadly speak from experience.
So she puts them on. She asks Keith how they look, and he says, you look good wearing my future.
I love that line, though.
I do too. I like it.
I really do.
Yeah.
As awkward and weird as everything is, like leading up to this like big moment where he picks her up and all this stuff happens, I really do like the ending. Like, it just makes me happy.
Totally. Again, in a vacuum, that ending is like perfect. I just love it.
It's a great, like, cinematic.
And it's what every girl who's like ever been in that situation wants, right? Like, he made the right choice.
Mary Stuart Masterson said, all anyone says to me a quarter of a century later is, I love that part where you get the earrings. She's like, it's so weird. That material aspect is not who Watts is. It's more than the earrings, clearly.
Right. She's not materialistic, and yet, like, the significance of the earrings, that is what she's valuing in that moment. I don't think she cares that she has, like, fancy diamond earrings.
So apparently in the final draft of the script, and this is interesting, Keith calls Watts by her real name, which is Susan, by the way. Who knew? And he tells her that he loves her. And she also supposedly tells him, okay, the earrings are going back in the morning and you're going to art school, to which he says, we'll keep one and make it a ring. I hate that. I hate that ending.
No, that's terrible. Because also they're in high school.
Yeah, that one's not pimp.
Also, you can't return one earring.
Right. That's a really good point.
I can suspend disbelief on a lot of things like Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica, but returning one earring, I draw the
Returning
line.
one earring. And then do you really see Watts as being like, so like now that we're together, I'm going to tell you all the things
I'm going to tell you how to live your life. Now.
So all of a sudden, Keith went from 5 minutes ago, not realizing that he wanted to be with Watts to now realizing that he wants to be with Watts to now realizing he wants to marry Watts in the span of 5 minutes.
Right. Like, thank goodness that's terrible.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. And I would like to think if they tested that on audiences would have been like, I mean, no offense to the writers, but man, that's just bad writing.
John Hughes, what's up with that? Yeah.
So let me ask you this, as ladies, like if you knew a guy that was their previous relationship, you're kind of courting them now and you knew that situation actually happened, it didn't work out, but would that be a red flag? Like this guy's a little unstable.
It's like a dumpster fire of red flags.
Right. Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Truthfully, like in dating, like sometimes people share what they think are funny little anecdotes. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay, thank you. Check.
In terms of legacy for this film, Leah Thompson said, I hear from more men than women who love it, but I can't tell you why. Maybe because it's two girls fighting over a guy, or because it's about a guy trying to find himself. I also hear from a lot of gay women who love Watts. I'm sure she hears a lot from a lot of straight women who love Watts. I love Watts. You love Watts.
What's not to love about Watts?
I know. Clearly the better choice.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting. Like she hears from more men than women who love this film. I wonder why. Kenny, do you have any insight on that? As the man speaking for all men and all mankind. Yes.
As cool as you are, I think there's always that thing where you were uncool at some point, whether that was when you were 8 or you were 12 or 14 or 17, whatever it was. You probably still in your heart, you're still feeling like, yeah, I remember those days where, I couldn't get a second look and I was always just like an outcast and
or the underdog.
The underdog. Yeah. That's the better term for it. And I think that's why like you can find probably the billionaire up on the hill and he probably still cites some kind of wonderfulness that, oh yeah, it's a great movie. It's because of Keith, because he's always, and often those guys, those successful guys later in life, they weren't that cool in the early days.
Yeah, it's true.
So like when Keith wins, and then he wins on his own terms, he makes it all happen. It's like
a win for every man.
It's a win for every man. And it's like, please, every guy dreams of having a young Mary Stuart Masterson as their best friend. Like, please. Like,
right. She's very cool.
Okay, so this is interesting. This was actually John Hughes's final teen film before moving on to more adult themes.
What adult films did he make?
Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck. Lots of things.
But like so different.
I don't know. He just like stepped out of the teen genre specifically.
The teen angst drama, probably more.
Yes, the angsty teens. But still, I also just find it very charming. And it's not necessarily charming start to finish. You're like, what a charming, beautiful, like wrapped in a bow. But there's just so many charming moments and characters like Duncan and Watts and.
Well, there's a thing, right? It's like albums. There's albums that are meant to be listened to as a record or an album. And then if you pluck out individual songs, they're okay. They're not that great, whatever. And then there's albums that are just a series of singles that don't sound like a cohesive album. And I almost feel like Some Kind of Wonderful is a series of singles that I'm like, you can extrapolate that last scene and present it on stage and to be a great scene.
Yes. Or that kiss is phenomenal.
Right.
Like what a moment, right? Like there are just some really, really awesome scenes in this, but like, does it all stitch together?
Right. Like that scene in the Suzuki with Amanda and the girl from Herman's Head.
Oh my God. When I look at her, all I can see is Herman's Head also.
Yeah, that's all I could see. So
you know what? I completely forgot that show existed at all.
Okay. I think about that show way more than anyone else in the world. I think about Herman's Head a lot and I can't explain it.
I went and saw a live taping of Herman's Head.
You did not.
As they shot it. I did.
So you should be the one thinking about Herman's Head every day, not me.
Yeah, I will. I mean, I made the reference. I made the Herman Zed reference. So I apparently think about it relatively frequently.
I think about Alf more than I think about Herman.
I think about Alf a lot too. I do.
I binged Alf like 2 months ago. I binge watched that show. It was interesting.
That's a journey. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the characters. What did they go on to do?
I think that, and it hurts me, but I think that Watts and Keith ended up together and that they had a lot of very hot sex.
Okay.
And then Keith went to art school because they returned the earrings.
Because she told him to.
Right. Mm-hmm. And they broke up because Keith started getting all hoity-toity with like the super artsy whatever. And Watts was like, I don't need that, man. And then probably maybe Watts ends up in some like really interesting relationship with like maybe a guy, maybe a girl, who knows? Mm-hmm. But like, I feel like whatever relationship Watts ends up in, that it's like really cool and like very avant-garde.
So they don't stay together in your ending.
No.
Okay. Kenny, what do you think?
I think that's true. I think they do go separate ways in the college years. But I would like to believe there is something that happens post-college that they cross paths again, possibly in New York or something, just by accident, by happenstance. She's out there because of XYZ and he's out there because of art.
He has an exhibition and like she's like a drummer in a band, like a really cool band. And like they meet in New York. That's the movie I want to see.
Yeah, maybe she's the drummer on the Tonight Show.
Oh, and then he comes on as like a guest.
And she goes by Susan now. Is her name Susie W? I don't know. But
I think that the reason I want my ending is because I want Watts to end up with somebody who like really values her.
And you don't think that can be Keith?
I think that Keith, even in his best version of himself, is always going to take Watts for granted on some level.
Oh, I see.
Like, I want Watts to be with somebody that like feels about her the way she felt about Keith.
Okay.
Like, I'm glad she got him in this scenario because that's an important part of her story arc. But like, in the end, I want her to have this like really amazing relationship. And I just don't know that Keith is the person for it.
And maybe she's living with her brother on the Oregon coast. And then they take in a guy who kind of has like a very Buster Keaton sort of silent movie type of approach.
Looks a little like Johnny Depp.
Yeah. And she takes to wearing snorkels and making smoothies.
I like it. She now goes by June.
Yeah, some names sort of Juniper Pearl Pop, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there.
You just spitballing here. I love it.
Just spitballing.
Okay.
And
okay.
yeah, and
somebody should make a movie about that.
Yes, I would like to see that movie as well.
Right. Well,
I like it.
Just an idea.
I like it. So what about Amanda? Or we just don't care?
She moves to the city, New York. She changes her name to Caroline.
I get where you're going with it.
Yeah.
She goes back to the future.
Leah Thompson thinks that she would have had a career in fashion, that she would have been a CEO.
Yeah. So the question is, would she just end up being this like super independent woman and like maybe not having a relationship?
Oh, I think she wants the finer things in life. And I don't think that she's going to depend on a man to get them. So I think she's going to go to college. I think that she's going to get a great job. I think she's going to pour herself into her career, make a shit ton of money, and, worry about the relationship thing later.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get the overwhelming sense that she was like this nurturing, like warm.
Right. Or that she was like pining to have like a bunch of kids and.
Right. I didn't get that sense that she was like, this is very important. The only reason why she's with Hardy Jens is because it's like the status thing, right?
Right.
Right. He was a means to an end.
In terms of Hardy, I mean, I think we can all agree he like went to jail for some
for insider trading.
Yeah, like for sure. He like ended up being like a crypto guy or something and doing things really, really poorly.
Yeah. And I feel like Duncan probably became a tattoo artist, but like a really like famous, cool one.
Where you need like a mad reservation, like years in advance.
Yeah.
That cat that he scratched into the desk. I mean, like, he's got skills.
Right. And the girlfriend without skin. I mean.
Okay, guys, this is your favorite movie. What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are that this movie is best enjoyed without analyzing it too deeply.
Okay, fair.
And really focusing on the kiss and the ending. These are the keys to successfully enjoying Some Kind of Wonderful.
What about you, Kenny?
I think it's best watched after you kind of watch the other more famous John Hughes films. You watch this one and take it as a kind of a different film.
Okay, do you watch it before Pretty in Pink or do you watch it after Pretty in Pink?
I think you watch it after. I think just by nature of you're going to watch the more popular ones, you watch this one after. But I would embrace the concept that it's like track 11 on a 14-track CD that you just kind of like. At first, it takes a while to really like it, and then a couple years later, you're like, you're jumping to, I'm making CD references, but you know what I'm saying?
How old are you, Kenny?
Yeah, I'm like, people are going, what's a CD?
What's a CD?
You're going to the 11th song on a track list, right? You're going, that's the one.
I mean, it's a treasure, and it's a treasure that seemingly not everybody knows about.
Exactly.
Right.
It is. I mean, this is not my favorite movie, but it does have a couple of my favorite scenes. It's overall super enjoyable. You could totally watch it with your teens. It's a fun watch. And I mean, a love triangle. It's timeless.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kenny. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, yeah. No, it was great. I really was looking forward to it for quite a while. And it was everything that I hoped it would be. So I could do another 3 hours.
Thank you all for joining us. If you're enjoying the pod, we invite you to rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And if you just can't get enough, we invite you to check out our Patreon. For just $5 or more per month, you'll gain access to bonus episodes. And more importantly, your money goes to supporting the pod.
You can find us on the socials and the web at theuntitledgenxpodcast.com.
We hope you keep in touch, beautiful people. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.